Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner.
Hello, welcome to Squirrel. I am Candace.
And I'm Jody.
And today we are, welcome to October. We're in the spooky season. And this episode is about telling stories around the campfire. It's actually just about like the scary stories that that we could kind of remember from when we were little, and that we would tell around the campfire, or that you would tell like at camp or at anytime you're camping. Just these kind of supernatural, scary stories that pinprick our heart, and kind of we remember them. When you're walking in a dark, woods or something.
Well, and I think storytelling as kids is like you want to scare your friends. It is fun to scare your friends. And so if you just happen to have a story in your pocket, like one you'd read or one that someone else had told you, your goal was to share that again and get that same reaction out of them that perhaps somebody else had gotten out of you. And there was a joy in that. There was a joy in seeing somebody visibly get terrified at whatever you were sharing with them. And I might have liked that a little too much.
That sounds like
growing up.
You liked it a little too much.
So I read all of the Scary Stories You Read in the Dark series, and I would collect my favorites.
Oh, yeah?
And I would use them to inflict torment on my fellow classmates because I thought it was delightfully fun.
Oh, my gosh. No, that was definitely not me. You mentioned that. I'm like, oh, my gosh. Yeah, that's a really entertaining thought. No, that was definitely not me. I was the brunt of that. So you get around and you tell me these stories, and they're going to terrify me, and like I'm not going to be able to sleep at night, and I'm not going to be able to. I'm going to have to close my closet every night or put a mirror down. I'm that person that's going to be terrified by the little things that you say, or the stories that you tell. So we're going to share like some stories that kind of terrified us. I think I brought this up because first I want to talk about story, just in general, and kind of what affects us and helps us, build our story imagination. But the other thing that kind of fascinates me is just oral traditions. So like if you think of oral traditions, because I just want to put this as a base. So there wasn't, back in the olden days, right, where there wasn't written, like, there wasn't scholarly people there were a few people that maybe knew how to write, but everything was told orally. So you get like these fables or morality stories that try to help teach children to not walk in the woods, or to not, like Aesop's fables, or the Brothers Grimm, right? They're telling these stories to kind of keep kids from doing certain things. But that was how storytellers told a lot of history when they were, when they're trying to tell, like, I'm really struggling this morning. But the histories of their people, right? Or because they didn't have people that read, or they didn't have written language that people knew.
Think about even today. If you want your kid to not do something and just telling them isn't working, sometimes it's like, oh, remember when Uncle Bobby was driving too fast and he got in an accident? That's why we don't drive too fast.
Or that's why we don't stick our arms out the window, because remember Bobby, who lost his arm because he was leaving his arm outside the bus, and it got that's what.
Remember the one-armed man?
Right.
Like, and this was, that's how you'd try to make these lessons memorable, is like to make a story out of them. And it's also like, if you had really interesting family stories, like this storytelling tradition is very organic. It's very natural for people to do. And so I can imagine all through history, people usually it's just like funny stories that happened in their past, but then it turns into more because the stories keep getting told through the generations. And without a written tradition, the details get a little fuzzy. And that's where we get these overblown, like big legend stories, is because this oral tradition can't capture the perfection of the story. And so they're living things. They keep trying. They keep growing. And so all of a sudden we get these huge fables of monsters that live in the woods and witches and ghosts, and like from small things, big things can happen. And that's why I really love how some of these scary stories probably started once as I was out in the cabin one day and the door slammed behind me. And there was no wind and there was no storm. There was no reason that door should have shut. I think it was Grandma visiting me. And all of a sudden, 30, 40, 50 years later, when the grandkids are telling it, it's turned into something completely new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. So what makes a really good, campfire story? What would you think?
Ooh, let's see. There has to be something supernatural in it. There has to be something unexplainable that's in it.
Yeah, it's something, maybe, and a cliffhanger. I always think that's important to add to the story. Like, it leaves you right there at the edge of, well, what if? What would happen if this guy's still haunting the woods today? And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no really good resolution. There's not really a happy ending for these poor characters that end up in these stories. Like, we want to let our imaginations just go off that cliff and try to figure out what's going to happen. So I think that's lovely. Lovely, yes.
I think that obviously there's a lot of hauntings. We can always bring up the haunting of something, or somebody needs revenge for some reason. And so there's always a jealousy maybe that they're trying to act on, or this ghost that it's unsettled and wants to wreak havoc to any passerby or any person who sleeps in this house or whatever.
Well, I think humanity has this really weird fascination of what happens after you die. And there's so many unanswered questions there. And so having ghosts in stories is this supernatural step. Mm-hmm. Pun intended. But I think that there needs to be at its heart something very, very relatable. It needs to be a story that you can get behind, where you have a pair of fated lovers, and you have one that has something really horrible happen to them, and then you're like, oh my gosh, how's the other one going to feel? What are they going to do? What's going to happen? Something very, very relatable, and having something terrible happen, and you know bad things are going to happen just because that's how these kinds of stories work. And that's how normal people would work. And so if you have people doing these things where this terrible thing happens, they can't explain it. Yes, definitely separate the party and go down the stairs into the dark basement, because that makes so much sense.
I do like that. I don't know what commercial it is, but it's where these people are actively trying to run from something, but they're let's go into this big, I don't know, shed of chainsaws or something like that.
Let's do the worst possible option.
Yeah,
yes.
Well, and that the characters in maybe these stories are probably not doing the smartest things.
No, but that's what makes, because people listening to the stories know better, and they're going to react. They're going to be like, no, don't do that. Tell me more. What did they do next? And so there's this instant tension, and there's this instant interest, and there's this, you're invested in this story and what's going to happen, because part of it's maybe this could happen to me. There's this suspension of disbelief almost. Mm-hmm. So I think there's also a lot of, in these scary stories, there's always something that's a premonition. There's always some sort of, I think something bad is coming, and then it's this, it confirms the bias. You're I think something's bad is coming. So every, thump on the floorboard, and every creak in the wall, and every sound that comes through the door is going to be a confirmation that something bad is coming. And then you have this, maelstrom of, oh my gosh, that is the ghost. And then something real does happen, and it's just I knew it.
Well, in story structure, just even knowing that you put a little bit of premonition into the story. So, I mean, we're talking about oral storytelling, but looking at just a structure of a short story that doesn't need to have it still has an arc, but it doesn't need to have a resolve. So, but you still have to build on the tension of each step. So either, each creak or each, ghostly, I don't know, voice or something that adds one more layer up until the dropping point to the cliffhanger that just kind of leaves you going, oh my gosh. So.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
A witch is born when from her is torn something greater than her soul. Once upon a time, there was a young girl who lived near an enchanted forest with her sister and father. One day, while her father was gone selling firewood to the neighboring villages, her sister fell ill. Out of desperation, the young girl ventured into the forest for help, and there she found a woman who gave her everything her soul desired. Ambrosine lives next to an enchanted wood, which is no big deal when you know how to spot a magic hoax nest and trap nasty little night fairies, and certainly no big deal when there is not even a witch in the woods. When her little sister Rosaline encounters a strange new creature, she falls asleep and a dangerous fever dream threatens her life. With their mother dead and their father gone, Ambrosine gambles with the deepest desires of her soul as she fights to save her sister. Start off the witchiest month of the year with the fascinating and spooky prequel to C.M. Adler's series, The Witches of Grimm. Free on BookFunnel.
So growing up, I'm fascinated. I would love to know the kind of stories that you heard that stuck with you. Like, what stories did your friends torment you with?
Well, I had brothers. Let's talk about the brothers. And they would often tell me a lot of things that weren't actually true. So they told me that pirates lived in the fog. Now, I think that's a base of a movie. I don't know. I haven't actually watched The Fog, but I believed
there are no pirates in the fog.
Oh, see, well, there you go. That these pirates that lived in the fog would snatch children away, and they would just disappear. So I really believed anytime there's fog, even today, I get creeped out by fog because I feel that you're surrounded by you just absence. It's just, so you don't know what's around. And that's one of those really great elements that you throw into like horror movies where you just you feel like there's an ambient presence of something, but there's nothing around you, you know? So I remember that. And oh my gosh, I want to talk about Bloody Mary.
Ooh, yes, please do.
So Bloody Mary is something that have you ever done it?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
freaked my elementary school grade. Excuse me. I freaked myself out quite a few times.
Yeah, was it so you did Bloody Mary in elementary?
Oh.
Yeah, that was me too.
Oh yeah.
It was third grade.
And in the creepy elementary school cafeteria bathroom where you could turn the lights out because in the older schools they didn't make the switches that the kids couldn't touch. And so like it would go completely dark because there was no windows in this room at all.
We have a very similar experience because mine was a creepy, like my elementary has been bulldozed because it was so old. But I remember, it was in a very creepy, and I wasn't the one that actually instigated this. I was there. Someone else did it. Someone like you, Jody, that probably would do this. And it terrified me because I know that so Bloody Mary, for my version, there are a lot of different versions that I kind of looked up, but my version, and I think what is kind of the going version is where you say Bloody Mary's name 3 times. And we spin around and then we open our eyes and look in the mirror. And she appears.
I don't think we had spinning in ours, but I think you had to stare into the mirror as you chanted it because something was going to happen in the mirror.
We spin
and like, but you'd hear these stories that other people would tell that were like, friend of a friend of a friend. They're like, oh yeah, they did this and the mirror broke. Or they did this and then it looked like their face was covered in blood. Or like like there's always blood and there's always like some sort of like scary thing that happens that you cannot explain, which makes it even scarier.
Yeah, I had it like mirrors kind of terrified me after that. Well, there was also this episode of Amazing Stories. Do you remember Amazing Stories? It doesn't matter. It was very much like like the Twilight Zone, where it had just these like supernatural stories that didn't have an explanation. They just and they were only like 20 minutes long or 10 minutes long.
Yeah, because I mean, there's Twilight Zone, there's Amazing Stories, there's like the one with the Crypt Keeper.
Tales from the Crypt.
Thank you. Like there was a whole like that's fascination with the spooky story that's short to the point and like it sticks with you. Yeah. There was a ton of those.
Yeah, so
I mean, the whole
this
Goosebumps series is built on this.
Yeah. This might also be a Twilight Zone episode. Well, there was this in the mirror. There was a person that was in the mirror that was not in the room, and this person kept on coming closer and closer and closer. Every time this guy looked in a mirror, and he didn't want to look in a mirror anymore because he was so terrified. But then he was faced like, I don't know, at the very end, this creature or person like right behind them. Oh my gosh, that's so scary.
Ooh, that's a good one.
So bad.
I like it.
So when I was growing up, I had a mirror in my room, and every night I put it face down because I was so terrified of seeing something in the mirror. And Bloody Mary, that whole thing kind of just really stuck with me. What about you?
Oh, goodness. Okay. So like I said, most of the scary stories that I really grew up with came from the Scary Stories series, the ones that you tell in the dark. Mm-hmm. And there was there was one that was so weird. It was like the longest one in one of the books. It was called Harold. It was about a scarecrow that came to life. And,
oh my.
And,
that's frightening.
And like he started like killing things and skinning them and letting them dry on the roof of the farm. Like the story is so weird, but it stuck with me just because having something that's really not supposed to be alive, starting to do things that you're like, it's not just living, it's going out and killing things. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm going to be next. Mm-hmm. Oh. And so that one freaked me out. But the ones that I loved as a kid were not necessarily the like really scary ones. I like the jump scare ones because that's the cheap scare. It's so much easier. And so there's the whole story about Who's Got My Toe. Do you know Who's Got My Toe?
No.
Okay, so the whole telling of it is like this guy's going about his day and he's hearing this voice in the distance. Who's got my toe? And like as he goes through his day, it gets closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. Mm-hmm. And as you're telling this, you're trying to make it as interactive as possible because you're telling it generally to a younger child. Yes. And then you're like, and he was right next to him. And then you reach out and you grab the person's foot that's next to you and you say, I've got it. And you scream into the, you practically scream in their face, I've got your toe. And that's the jump scare because you've built it up and you've built it up and built it up. And then out of nowhere, you just grab them and you yell, I've got your toe. I mean, it's a dumb story.
Do you know this pimple story?
Oh, the one with the spiders inside it.
Well, you just ruined it.
I'm so sorry. Yes, let's back up. Tell me the pimple story.
I can't believe you just ruined my story. No, about the girl who had a pimple on her face and she tried to get rid of it. And it was like, she tried everything.
It was big.
It's just scarred big and big. And so you went to the doctor and opened it up and there's spiders.
Well, in my version, she was in the bathtub.
Oh, my.
And she was soaking it and it finally burst. And she's, very, very vulnerable at that point. And there's these thousands.
Because you put them in the bathtub. Yeah.
Duh. Writers get to choose these things. Well, and all these really nasty spiders are flying. And, yeah. Like there's your trifecta of perfect scare moment. You've got spiders. You've got someone who's very vulnerable.
Well, and it's something that you can tell like teenagers because they do have pimples.
They do,
and they are insecure about them. And what if there was a spider that actually lived up? I love it. Oh, there was also so urban legend here. I say urban legend, but there is a couple things here, just local, that I did when I was a teenager, and the one was called the Sidewalks. Do you know anything about the Sidewalks?
Only what you've told me.
Okay. So over on the east side of our valley, there is said to have these sidewalks. And the story is this guy murdered his wife, chopped her up into lots of pieces, and then buried parts of her body at the end of where the sidewalks end. And so so as a teenager, me and my friends went up on the east side. There isn't like a direction to where the sidewalks is. You just kind of have to find it. And you go there, and there's a lot of brambles, and hedges and stuff. So when you find the sidewalks, there's houses all around it, but we were there, and it's this rambling sidewalk that just ends at different places. So you follow it, and then it ends, and it was like super, super creepy. And you go at night, of course,
clearly.
But I loved that one. Yeah, I've actually been to the sidewalks. I probably could drive there, honestly.
Field trip.
It was totally scary.
Okay, so there was one movie that scared me beyond any other movie when I watched it as a kid. I probably watched it too young because I had an older sibling who watched movies that we both probably shouldn't have been watching, and that was the original Poltergeist.
Oh my goodness!
The original Poltergeist scared me to death.
Me too. And I wasn't supposed to watch it. I was really young. My parents had rented it, and they were watching it, and I had snuck on the side of where the living room is and watched a little
Stinker.
bit.
I was probably being babysat at the time because that's when we watched all of the
Tell
movies.
me what terrified you most about the Poltergeist.
Oh gosh, everything. I'm sorry. Like the tree that ate people.
The tree that ate people.
That freaked me out.
I could not have a room near a tree for years.
Being sucked under your bed.
Like with the
like there was
the clown.
There was the clown. I swear there was a point where the kid got sucked under the bed into the void. It could have been sucked into the closet, but there was a whole thing with like the portal in the closet.
Yeah. Okay.
And then in Poltergeist 2, it was the puddles in the garages.
I never made it to that.
You never made it to 2? I was a teenager by the time I made it to 2 because the trauma had finally worn off.
You're a teenager and you try to...
But like in number 2, I think there's reflective surfaces ended up being portals. And so these supernatural, whatever they were, like the poltergeists, could snag you through the mirrors and through the puddles in the parking garages. And so they do have a scene where someone's walking along and they fall through a puddle in the parking garage and disappear forever. I haven't stepped in a puddle in a parking garage in a very long time. Especially the ones that have oil on the top so you can't tell how deep they are.
So
yeah, creepy. I can watch it now, and I'm like, okay, I can see why it scared me, and I can see it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, it terrified me for a long time.
I'm still scared, and I'm scared at this moment. You mentioned that, and I'm having a little,
and here I am doing it again
because of that. There was a movie. I wish I could remember it. Somebody will remember this, but it had this episode. It had like a bunch of different stories together. And there was a episode, I believe, with young Drew Barrymore, and this troll lived in the wall. And he would sneak out of the wall at night and steal kids' breath away.
I remember this one.
Cat's eye.
Cat's eye.
I can't believe I remember
because the cat could see them and would knock them off or like. Yeah.
That's so creepy. So, yeah, there we go. What is this one about?
Oh, there's a story about, the story's called Humans Can Lick Too. It's a really creepy, scary story. So it's, the basis of the story is you've got kids alone in their home at night because typical. And, the kid's sitting on the couch and watching TV as one does, and like the news keeps flipping on. Oh, there's a serial killer that's loose. Oh, he's in this neighborhood. And it's like, that's close to me. And we think he's, and so, but the kid knows he's okay because every time he puts his hand down on the side of the couch, the dog licks his hand. and the dog, was going to keep him safe. And then, I mean, I don't want to spoil the end of the story, but at the end, it's not the dog.
And it's called Humans Can Lick Too.
And it's been around long enough that you should be able to just find it.
Oh my gosh,
search.
that's terrifying.
But there are other elements to the story that make it worse.
Oh gosh. Okay. I think we need to end the episode because I'm just terrified.
Are we creeping you out now?
Totally. Yeah, everyone should listen to this at night. Turn off. Yeah, just have a flashlight. Jeez. Yeah. So I'm glad we did this episode because, I mean, not only is it spooky season, but I think that there's fascinating legends that we kind of have around us, or stories that we remember that have kind of formed us.
Oh yeah.
So what made, I don't know, terrify us, or they're unexplained or supernatural, or kind of bring the belief of monsters. And I think that those should be shared.
Absolutely. Like, I think this is the perfect season to kind of indulge yourself in just a little bit of these spooky stories, or maybe watch something that gets your heart racing just a little bit, only to your level of comfort, of course. Like, I will not watch really gross, gory stuff. I hate that. Mm-hmm. I will definitely watch, I love Cabin in the Woods. I thought it was amazing. Mm-hmm. So I think definitely this is the season to indulge yourself, in like, try to write a spooky story.
Yes. I've written spooky stories, so we'll get to that one.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, on that note, tell us about the next episode.
We are going to talk all about what makes good monsters and villains next week, because spooking season must continue.
Yeah, I'm all in. Let's do it.
All right. Remember, we have a Patreon. If you're on a platform that likes to do likes and that thing, please do.
Yeah, so they can remind you that we have a new episode and all the good stuff. So thank you for listening for this week.
All right, we can't wait to share more next week.
Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. This episode was recorded at the Farmhouse Recording Studio. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
I'm reading yours. I'm reading mine.
No. It's monsters.
I know. I'm reading mine, and mine is wrong. Mine's okay.
We are doing monsters.